The plague did not begin with sickness. It began with a city that believed tomorrow would look exactly like today. Imagine climbing the steep road toward Edinburgh on a gray morning sometime in the early 14th century. Long before you see the castle rising above the volcanic rock, the city announces itself in another way. You smell it. Wood smoke drifts through the damp air, mixing with the scent of wet wool, fresh bread, damp earth, horses, brewing ale, and the countless ordinary tasks that keep thousands of people alive inside walls that were never meant to hold so many. This is not the postcard Scotland you may picture today. There are no quiet stone streets waiting for tourists. There are no tidy gardens or peaceful cafes. There is only a crowded town where every square foot matters, every bucket of water has value, and every sunrise begins another negotiation with survival. Before you can understand the plague that would one day change everything, you first have to understand the world it was preparing to enter. Edinburgh feels alive. Merchants call to passing customers. Blacksmiths hammer glowing iron into tools. Children weave between carts loaded with grain, barrels, and firewood. Bells ring from churches, marking the rhythm of hours more faithfully than any clock. From a distance, the city seems prosperous, almost confident. But confidence can be misleading. Every family depends on routines so fragile that a single failed harvest, a harsh winter, or a disrupted trade route can unsettle the balance. Life here is not measured in comfort. It is measured in whether there will be enough food until spring, enough fuel to outlast another cold night, enough work to keep a roof overhead. The streets themselves tell a quieter story. They twist and narrow as houses crowd closer together, each generation building upward because there is little room to spread outward beyond the city walls. Windows are small. Sunlight struggles to reach the ground. The higher stories lean so close that neighbors can exchange words without raising their voices. Privacy is a luxury almost no one expects. You hear footsteps overhead, conversations through timber walls, the creaking of beams, the restless movement of a city where thousands of lives overlap every hour of every day. Nothing about this place feels empty. Nothing feels still. And that constant closeness shapes everything. If you spend only a single day here, you begin to notice details that history books rarely mention. The cold lingers even after sunrise. Smoke clings to your clothes. Your boots gather mud faster than you can scrape it away. Every trip through the market brushes your shoulder against strangers carrying baskets, tools, sacks of grain, or bundles of firewood. The city is busy because it has to be. Every baker, cooper, mason, washerwoman, fisherman, tailor, and porter is part of an enormous machine that keeps Edinburgh breathing one ordinary day at a time. Yet beneath that ordinary rhythm lies a question no one thinks to ask. What happens when a city built to bring people together also becomes the perfect place for unseen danger to travel beside them? That answer has not arrived yet. For now, Edinburgh simply wakes, works, eats, prays, and sleeps, never realizing that the ordinary life unfolding around you is quietly becoming the beginning of one of history's greatest turning points. If there is one thing that keeps this city alive, it is water. Every morning, before merchants fully open their stalls and before the busiest streets fill with shouting voices, people begin walking toward wells, cisterns, and springs with wooden buckets balanced on their shoulders. Water is needed for bread, for soup, for brewing ale, for washing clothes, for cleaning tools, and for the endless chores that fill every hour from dawn until darkness. It sounds simple, but in a crowded medieval town, clean water is never something you take for granted. Every bucket carried home is part of a daily race against time, weather, and necessity. The steep slopes of Edinburgh make that work even harder. Climbing uphill with 40 or 50 pounds of water tests your legs before the day has truly begun. The journey repeats again and again because one trip is rarely enough for an entire household. Every drop has value, which is one reason people waste almost nothing. Clothes are worn for long periods before they can be properly washed. Wooden bowls are cleaned carefully. Rainwater is welcomed whenever the sky decides to share it. Even so, the city constantly struggles to stay ahead of its own needs. As the population grows, every narrow street produces more refuse, more ash from fireplaces, more scraps from kitchens, and more waste from workshops that shape leather, wool, iron, and timber into the goods people depend upon. Medieval Edinburgh has no modern plumbing hidden beneath its streets. There are no underground pipes quietly carrying everything away beyond the horizon. Instead, daily life depends on systems that require constant human effort. People carry, dump, sweep, haul, and clean because there is simply no other choice. Most families accept these routines without complaint because they have never known another way to live. What seems uncomfortable to you feels ordinary to them. That difference matters more than you might expect. History often judges the past through modern eyes, forgetting that people can only solve problems they understand. The citizens of Edinburgh know spoiled food can make someone sick. They understand that foul smells often accompany illness. They recognize the dangers of harsh winters and poor harvests. But they do not know about microscopic organisms, contaminated water supplies, or invisible chains of infection. Their understanding of health comes from observation, faith, tradition, and generations of practical experience. They are not careless. They are working with the best knowledge available in their own time. As you continue walking through the city, another pattern begins to emerge. Nearly everything happens close together. Homes stand beside workshops. Animals are kept near families because they provide food, labor, and income. Markets gather hundreds of people into the same streets day after day. Travelers arrive with carts loaded from distant towns, bringing cloth, salt, wine, timber, spices, stories, rumors, and opportunities. Every arrival promises prosperity. Every departure connects Edinburgh to places far beyond Scotland. That network is the source of the city's growing wealth, but it also creates connections no one can see. Every road leading through the gates carries more than goods. Every ship entering Scottish ports carries more than cargo. For now, those invisible passengers remain unnoticed. Life continues with remarkable confidence because ordinary days have a powerful way of convincing people they will continue forever. And as another evening settles over the rooftops, smoke curls once again into the cool air, church bells echo across the hills, families gather around simple meals, and no one suspects that the same roads bringing fortune to the city may soon carry something else entirely. As the morning stretches toward midday, the city grows louder with every passing hour. The market becomes the beating heart of daily life, pulling together nearly every corner of Edinburgh into one crowded space. Farmers arrive from the surrounding countryside with baskets of oats, onions, beans, and cabbage. Fishermen display their morning catch before it begins to spoil. Bakers stack dark loaves still warm from wood-fired ovens, while butchers negotiate loudly with customers hoping to stretch a few hard-earned coins as far as possible. Every purchase matters because few families have enough money to waste. Every decision is shaped by the coming winter, the next harvest, or the uncertainty of tomorrow. Food is never simply food. It is security. It is survival measured one meal at a time. If you were invited into the home of an ordinary family, you would not find a table overflowing with roasted meats and colorful fruits. Most meals are humble but filling. Thick oat porridge begins the day for many households. Bread appears whenever flour is available, though the texture is often coarse compared with the soft loaves people expect today. Cabbage, peas, onions, and leeks flavor simple stews that simmer slowly over open hearths. Fish is common, especially during religious fasts, while meat is a welcome luxury reserved for fortunate occasions or families with greater means. Ale accompanies many meals because brewing transforms grain into a drink that is often safer and more dependable than untreated water. It contains only a modest amount of alcohol, yet it provides valuable calories for people whose work demands constant physical effort. Every bite reflects the seasons. Summer brings fresh vegetables and herbs. Autumn fills storage chests with grain, dried peas, and preserved foods. Winter asks every family the same difficult question: did you save enough? Hunger is rarely dramatic. More often, it arrives quietly through smaller portions, thinner soups, and growing concern about supplies that seem to disappear faster than expected. No one speaks confidently about the months ahead because weather has the final word. A single season of poor harvests can ripple through every household, regardless of skill or determination. Yet there is another reality hidden beneath these ordinary routines. The crowded market that feeds the city also gathers strangers from every direction. Scottish traders exchange goods with merchants who have traveled across Britain and beyond the North Sea. Wool, hides, salt, timber, iron, wine, and fine cloth move from hand to hand through countless transactions that seem entirely routine. Every handshake represents trust. Every wagon entering the gates represents opportunity. The city's prosperity depends upon movement. Roads must stay busy. Ships must continue arriving. Trade must never stop. Few people stop to consider that prosperity and vulnerability often travel together. The same connections that allow Edinburgh to grow stronger also bind it to distant ports and unfamiliar places. News travels along these routes long before official messengers appear. Stories drift into taverns beside travelers warming themselves after difficult journeys. One merchant speaks of unusual sickness in another town. Another dismisses the rumor as exaggerated gossip meant to frighten customers. Most listeners return their attention to prices, weather, and tomorrow's work because alarming stories have always circulated from distant places. Life teaches people to worry first about problems they can actually see. The invisible rarely feels urgent until it becomes impossible to ignore. So the market continues to buzz with confidence, laughter, bargaining, and ordinary hopes, never realizing that beneath every familiar routine lies a fragile balance that history is quietly preparing to test. By late afternoon, the city begins to retreat indoors, but life does not slow down. It simply moves behind timber doors and thick stone walls where every household prepares for another long evening. Step inside the home of an ordinary craftsman, and the first surprise is how little empty space exists. One room often serves many purposes. It is a kitchen, dining room, workshop, and sleeping area all at once. Chests line the walls instead of closets. Wooden benches become beds when night falls. Straw mattresses, covered with coarse linen or wool blankets if a family can afford them, are rolled out across the floor. Every object earns its place because every inch of space must be used wisely. The fire burning at the center of the home is far more than a source of warmth. It cooks meals, dries damp clothing, provides light after sunset, and becomes the place where stories, prayers, and news are shared. Smoke drifts upward, but much of it lingers inside before escaping through openings in the roof or small vents. Your eyes sting. Your clothes absorb the smell within minutes. For the people living here, however, that familiar scent means something comforting. It means there is fuel left for another night. It means the family can prepare supper. It means winter has not won today. Children help with chores as naturally as they play. One gathers kindling. Another spins wool beside a parent. Older brothers and sisters fetch water, carry supplies, or assist in family trades long before reaching adulthood. Survival depends upon many hands working together. Leisure exists, but it appears in small moments rather than long afternoons. A song while weaving. A joke shared over supper. A simple wooden toy carved during the darker months. These quiet pleasures remind you that medieval people did not spend every waking hour suffering. They laughed, celebrated holy days, welcomed newborn children, mourned loved ones, and dreamed about better seasons just as people do today. Yet even within the warmth of home, the outside world never feels far away. Cold air slips through gaps around doors. Wind rattles shutters. Rain taps steadily against the roof. Every storm raises silent questions about crops, livestock, and tomorrow's work. Families cannot separate themselves from nature because nature decides so much of their future. Faith becomes another source of stability. Evening prayers are as much a part of daily routine as preparing food or tending the fire. Churches shape the calendar, mark the passing of time, and offer explanations for events that no one can fully understand. Blessings are spoken before meals. Saints are remembered. Bells echo across the city even after darkness settles, reminding everyone that they belong to something larger than their own household. As daylight fades completely, candles and oil lamps cast small pools of flickering light that never reach every corner of the room. Beyond the walls, the narrow streets grow quieter, but they are never completely silent. Somewhere a dog barks. A cart rattles over uneven ground. Footsteps disappear into the darkness. The city seems peaceful, almost protected by the familiar rhythm of another ordinary evening. Yet ordinary evenings have a remarkable way of hiding extraordinary change. Tonight, families finish their meals believing tomorrow will resemble today. They cannot know that beyond the hills, beyond the harbors, and beyond the roads stretching toward distant kingdoms, events are already unfolding that will soon make even these simple routines feel like memories from another world. Morning arrives again with surprising speed because darkness never truly belongs to the city alone. Before the first rays of sunlight reach the rooftops, people are already awake, rebuilding yesterday's routine one familiar task at a time. Fires are coaxed back to life from glowing embers buried beneath ash. Bread dough is prepared before the streets become crowded. Stable doors open as animals are fed and watered. Every action follows habits refined through generations because routine offers something precious in an uncertain world. It gives the comforting illusion that tomorrow can be managed if today is managed well enough. Yet beneath those routines, invisible companions move through the city without, attracting a single glance. Mice slip between grain sacks stored in warehouses. Rats search quietly beneath market stalls after merchants return home. Fleas ride unnoticed on animals that have traveled from distant farms, neighboring villages, or bustling ports connected by growing trade routes. None of these creatures seem remarkable. They have always existed alongside human settlements. Children chase them away. Shopkeepers curse them. Cats occasionally catch them. No one imagines they could become part of a much larger story because, to the people of this age, they are simply another inconvenience of everyday life. Even the city's busiest buildings quietly reveal how closely everything is connected. Bakers rely on grain delivered from surrounding fields. Brewers depend upon clean water and steady harvests. Blacksmiths shape iron brought from elsewhere. Cloth merchants display wool that may have changed hands dozens of times before reaching Edinburgh. Every trade strengthens the city, but every connection also shortens the distance between distant worlds. A traveler arriving after weeks on the road brings more than merchandise. He carries conversations from unfamiliar towns, weather reports from faraway valleys, changing prices from busy ports, and rumors that shift with every retelling. At first, those rumors sound almost unbelievable. Somewhere across the sea, people whisper that unusual illnesses have appeared in places few citizens of Edinburgh will ever visit. Others dismiss the stories immediately. Travelers have always exaggerated dangers to make their journeys seem more dramatic. Storms become hurricanes. Difficult roads become impossible wilderness. Minor sicknesses become terrifying mysteries. Experience teaches people to be skeptical, and skepticism feels reasonable because daily life around them appears unchanged. The ovens still bake bread. Church bells still ring. Markets remain crowded. Children still laugh while chasing one another through narrow lanes. Nothing visible suggests that history is preparing to interrupt ordinary life. This confidence is perhaps the greatest irony of all. Human beings naturally trust what they can see with their own eyes. If the streets remain full, if the harvest appears promising, if neighbors continue greeting one another every morning, then tomorrow seems secure. The greatest turning points rarely announce themselves with thunder or trumpet calls. More often they approach quietly, hidden inside familiar routines that no one thinks to question. As another day draws toward evening, Edinburgh continues to breathe with steady determination. Smoke rises above hundreds of chimneys. Merchants count their earnings. Families prepare another simple meal. Travelers search for warm shelter before nightfall. Somewhere beyond the horizon, however, roads, rivers, and sea lanes continue carrying people toward the city just as they always have. No gatekeeper can inspect every cart. No merchant can examine every bundle. No priest can foresee every danger. The people within these walls believe they understand the risks surrounding them, but the greatest challenge they will soon face is one they cannot yet imagine because it arrives without banners, without armies, and without any visible warning at all. Days pass, and the rhythm of the city remains remarkably unchanged, which is exactly why its people trust it so deeply. Predictability becomes its own kind of comfort. The baker still lights his oven before dawn. The blacksmith still measures the day by the ringing of his hammer. Monks still copy manuscripts by candlelight, believing that preserving knowledge is another form of serving God. Children still race through narrow closes, weaving between adults carrying baskets, bundles of wool, and barrels of ale. If you arrived as a visitor, you would see a city that appears stable, industrious, and full of quiet confidence. Yet beneath that confidence lies an invisible web of dependence that few people stop to notice. No household survives alone. The woman baking bread depends upon grain harvested by farmers she will never meet. The farmer depends upon iron tools shaped by a smith inside the city. The smith depends upon charcoal burners working deep within nearby forests. Merchants tie all of these lives together, carrying necessities from one community to another across roads that stretch through Scotland and beyond the sea. Every successful day depends upon hundreds of strangers doing their jobs well. That network creates prosperity, but it also means that Edinburgh is never truly isolated. It breathes with the wider world, drawing people, goods, animals, and ideas through its gates every single week. Faith helps people make sense of that uncertain world. The great church does more than hold religious services. It organizes the calendar, marks births and marriages, comforts grieving families, and reminds rich and poor alike that every earthly life is temporary. Bells echo across the rooftops at familiar hours, giving the city a shared heartbeat. When uncertainty appears, many people naturally seek reassurance through prayer before searching for practical explanations. This does not mean they ignore everyday responsibilities. On the contrary, faith and labor exist side by side. A merchant can bargain honestly, repair a leaking roof, care for aging parents, and attend worship without seeing any contradiction between those duties. That balance gives ordinary life its remarkable resilience. Even so, conversations slowly begin to change. Travelers arriving from farther south pause longer before answering simple questions. Someone mentions an unusually quiet harbor. Another speaks of markets that closed earlier than expected in a distant town. A wandering merchant insists that business has become unpredictable along certain trade routes. No one story seems especially alarming by itself. Together, however, they create something less tangible than fear, but more persistent than curiosity. People begin repeating the same question in different ways. Have you heard anything unusual? Most answers end with a shrug. Rumors travel faster than truth, and wise people know better than to panic over uncertain tales. Besides, there is too much work waiting at home. Roofs need repairing before the next rain. Firewood must be gathered. Livestock require care. Families cannot pause their lives simply because of whispers carried by strangers. So Edinburgh chooses what every healthy community usually chooses. It continues forward. Shops open. Bells ring. Bread is baked. Fires are lit. Children grow another inch taller without anyone noticing. The city believes that ordinary life will protect it because ordinary life has always carried it through difficult seasons before. That quiet confidence is understandable, even admirable. But history has a habit of changing direction long before the people living through it recognize that the road beneath their feet has already begun to bend. The first change is so small that almost nobody treats it as important. A merchant arriving from the south pauses before unloading his goods and mentions that travelers have become unusually cautious. An innkeeper recalls that a familiar customer chose a different route this season without much explanation. Sailors speak more quietly than usual while repairing ropes along the harbor. None of these moments seem connected. They are simply fragments of conversation drifting through taverns, marketplaces, and workshops like smoke carried by the wind. Yet the mood of the city begins to shift in ways that are difficult to measure but easy to feel. People ask more questions before welcoming strangers into their homes. Merchants glance twice at unfamiliar wagons before agreeing on prices. Priests hear prayers that sound slightly more anxious than they did only a few weeks before. No official warning has been announced. No gates have been closed. Life continues almost exactly as it always has. That is precisely what makes the uncertainty so unsettling. Human beings are remarkably skilled at adapting to visible dangers. A harsh winter demands extra firewood. A failed harvest requires careful rationing. Political unrest encourages stronger defenses. But uncertainty, without clear evidence, creates a different kind of burden. It fills the spaces between facts with imagination. Every rumor grows a little larger each time it is repeated. Every distant story acquires new details by the time it reaches another listener. Some insist that entire ports have become strangely quiet. Others laugh at such tales, reminding everyone that frightened travelers often mistake ordinary illness for extraordinary disaster. Skepticism remains the safer choice because panic solves. Nothing. Meanwhile, the city continues preparing for another ordinary season. Roofs are repaired before heavy rains arrive. Grain is stored carefully inside granaries. Families salt fish, dry herbs, and preserve whatever food they can for the colder months ahead. These tasks have always marked the turning of the year, and they provide comfort precisely because they are familiar. The people of Edinburgh believe that careful preparation is the best defense against whatever tomorrow may bring. In many ways, they are correct. Good planning has carried generations through difficult winters and uncertain harvests. It simply cannot protect against every kind of challenge. Looking back with modern knowledge, it is tempting to wonder why no one recognized the warning signs sooner. But that question is unfair. The citizens standing in these streets have never studied bacteria, viruses, or disease transmission. They cannot search maps showing outbreaks hundreds of miles away. News travels only as fast as horses, ships, and tired travelers can carry it. Information arrives incomplete, delayed, and often contradictory. Every decision must be made using fragments rather than certainty. That does not make these people foolish. It makes them human. They are doing exactly what most of us would have done if placed inside the same world with the same understanding. So another sunrise paints the castle walls with pale light. Bakers need fresh dough. Children chase one another through the narrow closes. Church bells call the faithful to prayer. Merchants greet familiar customers with practiced smiles. The city still feels alive, still feels hopeful, still believes the future will resemble the past. Yet somewhere beyond the horizon, events are already moving closer with every passing day, carried not by armies or conquerors, but by the ordinary movement of trade and travel that has made this thriving city possible from the very beginning. As the seasons turn, the people of the city continue searching for meaning in a world that often refuses to explain itself. Every unexpected hardship is viewed through the knowledge available to them, and that knowledge is shaped by faith, tradition, observation, and memory rather than modern science. When storms damage crops, prayers are offered for better weather. When illness visits a household, neighbors bring food, comfort, and quiet words of hope. The church stands not only as a place of worship, but also as the center of community life, where people gather to celebrate joyful moments, seek guidance during uncertainty, and remind themselves that every life is part of a greater story. It is easy to forget how much courage ordinary faith can provide when tomorrow cannot be predicted. Throughout the city, countless small rituals help people face an uncertain future. A merchant quietly crosses himself before beginning a long journey. A mother whispers a blessing over a child before sending him into the busy streets. Craftsmen pause briefly when church bells echo across the rooftops, marking another hour that has safely passed. These habits are not empty superstition. They are emotional anchors in a world where nature, weather, harvests, and fortune can change with little warning. They help transform uncertainty into something people believe they can endure together. Looking through modern eyes, we sometimes judge medieval people by what they did not know instead of appreciating what they managed to build despite those limits. They created thriving markets without engines. They constructed durable stone buildings without modern machinery. They organized trade across hundreds of miles without telephones or digital maps. They raised families, governed communities, solved disputes, preserved knowledge, and adapted to difficult environments using tools and ideas refined across generations. Their world was different, but it was not irrational. It operated according to the best understanding available at the time. That is why the approaching crisis would prove so difficult to recognize. The danger was not hidden because people were careless. It was hidden because it belonged to a reality no one had yet discovered. No physician could examine a drop of water beneath a microscope. No scholar could explain invisible organisms passing silently from place to place. No city official could issue warnings based upon scientific evidence that did not yet exist. Faced with uncertainty, people naturally relied upon the explanations that had guided their parents and grandparents for centuries. Those explanations had often helped communities survive previous hardships, making them entirely reasonable from the perspective of someone living in that age. Meanwhile, life continues almost peacefully. Market stalls remain busy. Apprentices continue learning their trades. Travelers still arrive carrying cloth, spices, iron, and stories from distant lands. The castle still overlooks the streets with quiet confidence. Every familiar sight reassures the people below that their city remains strong. Yet beneath that reassuring rhythm lies a truth that only history will reveal. The greatest vulnerability of Edinburgh is not its walls, its supplies, or its defenses. It is the simple fact that it has become a successful, connected, and vibrant place where people, goods, and ideas constantly flow together. The very qualities that transformed this hilltop town into one of Scotland's most important cities have also woven it into a network stretching far beyond its gates. For generations, those connections have brought opportunity and prosperity. Soon, they will bring something no one standing in these crowded streets could possibly imagine, even as they greet another ordinary sunrise with hopeful hearts and complete confidence that tomorrow will unfold just like today. Now, stand once more at the edge of the city, just as you did at the beginning of this journey. The smoke still rises above the rooftops. The church bells still echo across the hill. Merchants still unlock their shops. Children still hurry through the narrow streets. And families still begin another ordinary day believing they understand the world around them. Nothing appears different. That is the lesson history quietly leaves behind. The greatest turning points rarely announce themselves with dramatic signs that everyone immediately recognizes. More often, they arrive while people are busy living perfectly ordinary lives. Looking back across the centuries, it is tempting to imagine that the people of medieval Edinburgh should have seen what was coming. We know the ending. They did not. They woke each morning thinking about bread, firewood, rent, work, aging parents, growing children, and the next market day. They worried about rain more than distant rumors. They planned for winter rather than for unimaginable disasters. In that sense, they were not different from us at all. Their greatest strength was also their greatest vulnerability. They built a city that attracted merchants from across Britain and beyond. They created thriving markets where ideas, goods, and opportunities flowed together. They depended upon cooperation, trust, skilled labor, and trade to make life better for everyone within the walls. Those achievements deserve admiration, not ridicule. Modern people often picture the Middle Ages as an age defined only by hardship and ignorance, but that picture misses something essential. A city does not grow through fear alone. It grows because countless ordinary people wake before sunrise, perform difficult work with patience and determination, teach their children useful skills, help their neighbors, repair broken roofs, preserve food for winter, and continue believing that tomorrow is worth preparing for. Edinburgh existed because thousands of people repeated those quiet acts of perseverance every single day. That is the world the approaching plague would eventually encounter. Not a city waiting to collapse, but a community filled with craftsmen, merchants, laborers, priests, mothers, fathers, apprentices, and children who had spent years building lives they hoped would continue for generations. When we remember the great epidemics of history, it is easy to focus only on the tragedy that followed. Yet doing so risks overlooking everything that came before. Before fear, there was routine. Before loss, there was laughter shared around evening fires. Before uncertainty, there were busy markets, ringing church bells, fresh bread cooling on wooden tables, and neighbors greeting one another in streets that felt permanently familiar. Those ordinary moments matter because they remind us what history is really made of. It is not only kings, battles, and famous dates. It is also the lives of people who never imagined they were standing on the edge of a chapter that future generations would study for centuries. As you leave the city behind, the smell of wood smoke still lingers in the cool Scottish air, just as it did on the morning you first arrived. Only now does that familiar scent carry a different meaning. It is no longer simply the smell of a medieval town. It is the final breath of an ordinary world, still filled with hope, still busy with everyday life, and still completely unaware that history has already begun walking quietly toward its gates.